My name is Ben Nemser from the Stephen Alexandra Cohen Foundation. I manage the Cohen Lyme and Tick-Borne Disease Initiative. The foundation is the largest private funder of Lyme and tick-borne disease research in the country, and we are proud to sponsor the LymeMIND conference for its 6th year. LymeMIND is an opportunity to bring together some of the leading researchers, clinicians, and decision makers, as well as patients and caregivers to talk about some of the most important issues in Lyme and tick-borne disease. We hope to bring you both vital information about the field, as well as hope for the future where Lyme and tick-borne disease are reliably diagnosed and easily treated. Like last year, we decided to host a virtual event. Of course, I would rather see you all in person, but getting a few hundred immune-compromised people together in the same room didn't seem like the safest idea. The format today will have a mixture of pre-recorded panel sessions and 3 live Q&A sessions. So after every 2 panel discussions, there will be a live Q&A session with those panelists. To participate in the Q&A session, you can submit questions via the chat feature on the left of your screen. Full agenda and detailed conference program are available at www.LymeMIND.org. In addition, all sessions from today will be available for replay on www.LymeMIND.org in about a week. Hope you enjoy the event.
Hello, welcome back. This session, we're going to be talking a little bit about some new clinical initiatives that we're really excited about. Today I have Dr. Roberta DiBiase, Dr. John Akkad, and Dr. Brian Fallon. I'll let them introduce themselves. Why don't we start with Dr. DiBiase?
Hi, I'm Roberta DiBiase. I'm the Chief of Infectious Diseases at Children's National Hospital in Washington, D.C., and I head up our efforts to take care of children with Lyme disease in the D.C. metropolitan region.
I'm John Akkad. I'm the director of the Lyme Disease Clinical Research Center at Johns Hopkins, where we have been doing clinical research now for 15 years and are now excited in joining the team you're going to be hearing about today in our new research endeavors.
And I'm Brian Fallon. I'm a professor at Columbia University Medical Center in psychiatry, and I direct the Lyme and Tick-Borne Disease Research Center. And now, because of these 2 new exciting initiatives, I direct the Cohen Center for Health and Recovery from Tick-Borne Diseases and a really interesting Clinical Trials Network Coordinating Center, which you'll be hearing about.
Well, great. Well, I guess we'll start there, Dr. Fallon. Can you tell us a little bit about the Cohen Center for Health and Recovery from Tick-Borne Disease?
Sure. So the Cohen Center for Health and Recovery, which we call CHAR, is a research integrated clinical program for children as well as adults suffering from Lyme and/or other tick-borne diseases. It will be located at the Neurological Institute, which is part of the Columbia University Medical Center complex. It will be staffed by a team that includes specialists in family medicine, neuropsychiatry, and integrative medicine. So you might ask, with all the things going on and with all the things that all of us are doing, why are we doing this? And there's 4 reasons. 1, Lyme disease is increasing, cases are increasing, people need to be seen. 2, there are very few physicians who have specific expertise in the diagnosis and treatment of these tick-borne diseases. 3, parents of children, especially if the children have atypical or chronic cases, have no idea where to bring their children for help and whom to trust. And 4, providers, if they are available, may not take insurance, leaving some people unable to afford care. So those are the 4 major problems that we wanted to try to address. So our primary mission is really to try to provide affordable care in New York City to adults and children who have these unique needs and clinical presentations. We're also, in addition to the clinical component, we're also going to be educating a new generation of doctors. So we'll be educating a new a new generation of family medicine fellows, as well as a new generation of medical students who will go on to whatever field they go into, but they'll have a strong background in Lyme and tick-borne diseases. And thirdly, the clinical center will also be conducting research. So everybody who comes in will be invited to participate in research, and we'll collect data on them and see what treatments work for them, what treatments don't work. So that will contribute to our knowledge about which treatments are effective for people with these different disorders.
Oh, that's great. That's very exciting. Can you tell us a little bit about the medical approach that you might be taking?
Sure. So as you know, people who come in with an acute tick-borne illness, if it's identified, diagnosed quickly, generally those people respond very well to treatment. They can be quite sick, but they can respond very well to treatment. Not all of them, but many of them. Others, in fact, most of the people whom we see tend to have more of a chronic multi-system presentation. And some of them have been sick months, years, and it requires a more comprehensive assessment and treatment plan. Our medical approach is going to be evidence-based, addressing relapsing symptoms that might be due to persistent infection or to immune changes, either because of inflammation or molecular mimicry, autoimmune type reactions, or brain changes as a result of the impact of the infection on the central nervous system. So it's important to look at all three of those different targets. And in addition, because we have that integrative medicine component, we're going to be looking at factors such as nutrition, substance abuse or substance use, vitamin deficiencies, dysbiosis in the gut microbiome, stress management, mental health, lifestyle issues such as are they exercising, what's their sleep like, and then there'll be people who need specialty care beyond what we can provide, but because we're at the Columbia Medical Center, we'll refer people and facilitate those consultations at the Columbia Medical Center. And finally, our treatment is going to be highly goal-directed, so we're going to target on what are the main symptoms that the people are presenting with. We're going to have a 6-month treatment plan initially, and we're trying to make it in these 6-month modules because we want people to leave and in a recovered status and go back to their other healthcare providers, because we want to have enough space to take on new patients as they come along. Because as you can imagine, there are a lot of patients out there. As John and Roberta well know, there's a lot of patients out there who have chronic symptoms that need help. So we're going to try to help as many as we can.
Well, that's great. So this was just announced a couple months ago. And when do you think it will be open to the public?
Well, we're still in the process of hiring and training new clinicians. We're designing a new treatment studies as well. So that takes time. And importantly, we're renovating clinical space, and that takes far more time than I imagined. So unfortunately, we probably won't know. That clinical space probably won't be available until March or April of 2022. So it'll be right in time for tick season, longer than I had anticipated. But we're gearing up. Our clinicians are being trained, and we are starting to see some patients very slowly, just as part of the training process for our clinicians. But we'll be in full swing certainly in the spring.
No, that's great. So in addition to CHAR, the Cohen Center, this group is also starting a clinical trials network. So over to Dr. Akkad, what is a clinical trials network, and how do you think it can help Lyme disease?
So a clinical trials network is something we've wanted to do for a long, long time. And it's basically bringing together different institutions, different investigators like Dr. Fallon and Dr. DiBiase and myself, and having them work together as a team and to initiate treatment trials or pilot studies to start to progress the whole field of treatment. You know, there hasn't been a treatment trial done for Lyme disease in decades, really. And so this is a chance to start treatment trials and pilot studies, and for us to, with input, initiate these studies so that we can learn more about how to take better care of our patients. So it's an exciting time. This has been something we've wanted to do for a long, long time. So this is collaborative. It's across multi-institutions. It's also collaborative with the ideas. We really are open to a range of ideas for how to treat patients. And so we've been taking input from all sources, from patients, from in the trenches, providers, from other people at medical institutions, and getting their input, because we're interested in all types of interventions, everything ranging from interventions around herbal therapies, antibiotic therapies, immune therapies. And it's really been interesting to get the input from these outside groups and to learn about what they think might be good ideas for us to tackle. So the advantage of doing it this way is that we can do it in treatment trials in a uniform fashion. When you bring together 3 groups, we have the chance up front to design the intake criteria, who's eligible, how we're going to assess the patients, how we're going to measure responses. And when we do that among multiple institutions, you get uniformity of data that allows us to combine the data. And when you combine the data, now we can initiate and execute studies much more rapidly. Instead of me just recruiting patients from my one institution, you have 3 institutions potentially enrolling patients, and the studies can just get done a lot faster, but in a uniform way. And when you do them over multiple sites, we also then can incorporate variables like geographic diversity, patient age, pediatrics versus adults, co-infection diversity, all those things that you couldn't do in just one site. So this is an incredibly exciting step forward. This is really hasn't been done in decades, and it's going to be a really exciting time.
No, that's great. Yeah, I think adding to that would be the validity of these studies goes up when you have multiple top-rated institutions working on them. How will the studies be selected? And then sort of a follow-up question to that. You mentioned sort of the patients. Just want to clarify if those are acute patients or patients with more persistent conditions.
So our focus is where the need is now, and the need really is patients with persistent symptoms. So we'll be recruiting patients with chronic illness related to tick-borne disease. That's where the need is, and that's really where the understanding and science is still so primitive, as everyone knows. So these are initially going to be pilot studies to look at efficacy, ability to recruit, side effects. And so initial studies will be what are called pilot studies, where we'll be recruiting patients to look at feasibility and safety. And then the idea is that preliminary data generated from these pilot studies would then be the pilot data that could be used to submit larger, bigger, classic double-blinded studies, which are kind of the second step that would be based on these pilot studies. And the ideas are coming from what we've already reviewed from the community. The investigators from the nodes have also submitted ideas, and so we have a committee that goes over the ideas and grades them based on different aspects of the studies. What's been very interesting is that there is a huge range of ideas, and these really have been embraced by the evaluation committee to look at all types of ideas. It is important that some of the ideas are not at the feasibility phase yet. They still need toxicity data or other data, but we've seen studies that are in the pipeline that may be ready for pilot studies, maybe in the second phase. And there are a lot that are available to study right now. So it's been very interesting to see all of these and to kind of grade them. So the next step is for the committee that's reviewing these then to make recommendations and then to get things going really in the near future. So we're not open up for recruitment to the studies right now, but very soon.
That's great. So why don't we kick over to Dr. DiBiase, who's on the phone. At Children's National Hospital, you have a lot of experience with Clinical Trials Network. Can you tell the audience a little bit about your experience and how you think it can apply to Lyme and tick-borne disease?
Sure. Clinical trials networks are really important no matter what the disease, particularly in the pediatric population, because there are specialized centers that really have the bandwidth and the expertise across multiple specialties to give their expertise and input in designing clinical trials. And so, for instance, our center has been involved for many years in things such as infections related to congenital infection, maternal to fetal transmission, a disease you may have heard of that's recently emerged called acute flaccid myelitis, also clinical trials related to inflammatory disorders of the brain and also of the blood vessels called Kawasaki. And then most recently, like many other centers, really focused more on COVID and this unique presentation in children called multisystem inflammatory disease. So even though these are very different diseases, the way we approach patients when we take care of them and the way we want to approach it when we're trying to answer an important scientific question is to look at it across multiple disciplines. And so, for instance, in our most recent studies and networks with MISC and COVID, we have a large network of practitioners that are specialists at looking at the heart and looking at the lung or looking at the brain, or from an infectious disease point, looking at certain diagnostics, or being an expert at diagnosing pain objectively and how to give really effective treatments for specific kinds of pain. So this is not only important when you have a known disease and you're giving a treatment, but when you're trying to think up ways to study, it's really helpful to have this network approach where you can get the expertise of not only your own center, but other centers who might have more expertise in one area than another. And that's exactly how we've been approaching this Lyme Clinical Trials Network, where in our meetings together, we share ideas that we may be doing at our center that are unique, but could be shared across centers and built into these research protocols. So essentially, you're getting the strengths of every center built into a single protocol in a collaborative way. So I really share Dr. Fallon and Dr. Akat's enthusiasm about this network. And I think what's really special about this one is it's going to have not only those that are very experienced with adult treatment of Lyme and all the questions that need to be answered in the adult realm, but pediatric Lyme, there are many similarities, but there are some unique things about pediatric Lyme, not only in how the children present initially, but perhaps in the way that they have longer term effects. We don't actually know yet the exact incidence. Is it the same as in adults or not? We definitely have children who have long-term effects, but even that alone needs to be established really well. And then perhaps our understanding of what those long-term effects are and the impacts on what areas of their health may be different in children than in adults. So it's really exciting to have these conversations across both the adult and pediatric spectrum, and to be able to include patients in both all the age groups into these unified studies that will be part of the Lyme Clinical Trials Network.
Yeah, that's great. We're really excited to have Children's National Hospital involved with all your expertise, and I really think the focus on children brings a unique challenge to all of you. So I guess one of the other big questions is there are hundreds of thousands, even millions of people suffering from persistent symptoms of Lyme and tick-borne disease across the country, but of course only a small fraction would be able to go to one of these centers, whether it's the Cohen Center or in the Clinical Trials Network. How can the work that you guys are doing actually benefit this larger, wider community of patients?
My feeling is that the way doctors practice is really affected by what they see in publications and what they hear from their medical societies. So one of the key points about both the clinical program, which has research, and the Clinical Trials Network in particular, is that this will generate data that will then lead to publications, which will be treatment focused and hopefully make recommendations as to what to do when you have a particular patient with this kind of problem or this presentation, for example. And then eventually that will make it into the international treatment guidelines. So that's what we're hoping, is that we'll be able to make a substantial difference. And this will help people around the world if we have new treatment guidelines that people can follow.
I think it's really important to know, providers, myself included, are always so in need of new options for our patients. And so I think this is something that I and others have been calling for years, is to develop more options. So this is the first step in developing more options for patients and their providers, so that they have a bigger toolkit of more things that they can use, but tools that have been run through rigorous, as you mentioned, validated studies, so that we know for sure that the benefit outweighs the risk, which a lot of times is hard to tell without doing a rigorous study.
Yeah, very good points. I guess one final question is there any plans to expand the Clinical Trials Network beyond Columbia, Johns Hopkins, and Children's National Hospital.
Well, you know, as Dr. DiBiase said, it's really helpful to have input from different centers, because you get some new ideas, some new approaches, some knowledge that the other place doesn't have. So we would love to have additional affiliates join us in this clinical trials network. And the only limitation really is funding, because if we have more funds, then we could bring on 3 or 4 new affiliates, university-based affiliates, to join us in this. And then the progress would be even faster, because we'll have more pilot studies happening. We'll have more collaboration across sites. It'll be so rich. And you know, one of the great things about a clinical trials network is also geographic diversity. So if we have sites in California and all around the country, it would be great. So it's really additional funding is what we're looking for. The Cohen Foundation has been enormously generous. So I'm looking for some other donors who might be out there who would be willing to join our effort.
Yeah, and again, more sites also gets more patients involved as well. So is there any place, by the way, that people can find out more information about these 2 initiatives?
Well, we have a CTN website. It's Clinical Trials Network's website. It's lymectn.org. Very easy, lymectn.org. And there you can find updates on what clinical trials are available. When we're soliciting suggestions about treatments, it's there, and soliciting proposals. So each year we'll be soliciting requests and information from the public and from other clinicians. And then finally, you can send an email to us at limecenter@cumc.columbia.edu. So that's limecenter@cumc.columbia.edu. And that'll put you on a mailing list, in which we'll give you updates by email of what we're up to.
Well, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate your time and all of your hard work that has gone into this, as well as all your team's hard work. So we very much appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks.